Scale is something you earn, not something you can create. Ended up raising what ended up being about $7.5 million over 4 years before selling the business to 65 private investors. I tell entrepreneurs that the best idea in the world is the one that they're obsessed with, but make no bones about it. I let everything else in my life be sacrificed so that I could get Protein Bar off the ground. We
Right.
remodeled my first store 13 times and like 6 times before I even opened the second store. Dr. Pepper noticed, like, look at this guy, Limitless, making a ton. And then Coke noticed.
It's
Fortune
personal.
favors the bold, TC. You know that.
Today, I'm thrilled to sit down with my friend and fellow University of Michigan Business School alum, Matt Matros, a visionary entrepreneur and founder who has built and exited not one, not two, but three companies, and with 8-figure exits under his belt. First, Protein Bar and Kitchen, which disrupted the fast casual industry. Then Limitless, an innovative beverage brand sold to Keurig Dr. Pepper. Finally, Shopflix, which was acquired by QVC. Now Matt is applying the same visionary approach to acquiring and growing small to medium-sized businesses, sharing the hard truths, big wins, and real strategies behind scaling big ideas into bigger businesses. Hey Matt, how are you, friend?
That was remarkable. Did my mom write that intro? Like, holy moly.
Well, listen, you are making big splashes in the world, and people are noticing. And I know, outside looking in, I just love the work that you've done because I know the story, right? I know our story, at least when we started together in business school 20 some years ago, where we were just trying to figure it out, right? We were in our 20s trying to figure it out. And here you are, fast forward, have done some cool, cool things. And I just want to talk to you about it. And so let's start with the protein bar, right? That was a big leap, because I know you started your career in CPG and then decided to make a leap shortly after. What was it for you? What was the aha moment to start Protein Bar?
Yeah, Protein Bar. I tell entrepreneurs that the best idea in the world is the one that they're obsessed with. And this is a perfect example of something that I couldn't sleep, couldn't think about anything other than getting this business off the ground. The idea was born post MBA. I graduated, you moved down south, and I moved to Chicago to work for Kraft Foods and traditional post MBA brand management as the brand manager on Kraft Cheese, which still can't say that with a straight face. Learned a ton.
Yeah.
Enjoyed my time at Kraft. Was there for 3.5 years, but while I was there, I would work out in a neighborhood gym called Lifetime Fitness, and they would sell me these shakes after working out for like $8 and put these tiny scoops of protein in. And but I would buy it because I needed it after my workout. And then after about a year and a half of doing that, I started scooping protein into a baggie and other vitamins and supplements, and then giving that to the clerk at the shop, and they would charge me maybe $2 for the banana and the cup. And after that, after doing that for a year, I was like, oh, that's what I want to do. I want to start a protein shake shop, essentially Jamba Juice but healthier. So October 17th, 2007, it was literally an aha. It's like, oh, I've been paying other people for this thing that doesn't exist, solving my own problem. Um, that's what I want to go do. So that was in October. I spent 3 months business planning, which to me, business planning meant actually like researching and building a P&L for what a smoothie shop in the Loop would look like. So I sat at Jamba Juices in the city and counted customers. I called produce suppliers to see
Wow.
what they sold strawberries for, and tried to estimate sales and built a whole P&L. And then in January of 2008, decided to go all in on it, which to me meant liquidating all my life savings, which was about $200,000, and getting some SPA loans and going at it. So we opened a year and a half after that, May of '09. So it took a while to get open. It was a physical retail space, so it took a while to find the space, negotiate for it, build it out, and whatnot. But then opened on May 18th, 2009, and sort of haven't looked back.
Wow. Wow. That is phenomenal. What I appreciate about what you just said was it wasn't just the idea, but you did the work, right? You literally sat in, counted customers. It wasn't just some theoretical concept.
Yeah, I'm seeing this a lot, either entrepreneurs that I help, or folks that I work with who want to acquire business. They think it's simple. It's really not.
Yeah.
And it is involve a lot of hard work, especially when you put your risk together, when you put so much risk into it. Um, but make no bones about it, I let everything else in my life be sacrificed so that I could get Protein Bar off the ground. My relationships suffered, interpersonally, my friendships, they didn't suffer. I just didn't really put time, effort, and energy into them. So they
Right.
kind of diminished. This was all I was thinking about. So it came at a cost. And I often wonder if I were, at the time I was 29, I often wonder if I were married and had children, would I have been as risk tolerant? Well, I know I wouldn't have been as risk
Yep.
tolerant and have the ability to go all in the way that I did.
I think sometimes with social media, they just show the shiny parts of it, but helping people understand like what it takes from an entrepreneur perspective. So you started with one location and then over time, you scaled. How did you approach scaling Protein Bar from like a single concept to a
Yeah.
multi-location brand?
I didn't know how I was going to do it. I just knew that my vision was to have many locations because I was starting a retail-based business. It was specialty retail, and in that industry, you grow by opening units. It's hard to getting more customers to the door,
Okay.
but you can grow by adding units. So opened in May of '09 and struggled out of the gate. I was selling just protein shakes, which is what my business plan said I could do. Um, I thought I could survive on just shakes, but I was doing about $2,000 a day in sales. Needed to be doing about 3,000 just to be breaking even. So I was struggling. And I'd walk around the loop, in Chicago on a Tuesday and be like, it must be a holiday today. Where is everybody? And then I'd look like, oh, they're in line at Chipotle. So it didn't take me long to realize that if I wanted to be successful selling things to urban professionals, I needed to sell them lunch. So after 9 months, I added food to the menu, just sort of my own little concoctions. And that's when things really took off. And then the concept changed. So from there, I sort of had what folks would call product market fit, and then decided to open store two, three, four. I was able to do that because I had this exciting retail concept, and people were coming to the door every day that were rich traders and bankers and lawyers that worked in the loop. So I had lots of inbound requests for, hey, what is this? Is this like a franchise, or can I invest in this thing? Sure you can. So
Okay.
ended up raising, you know, uh, what ended up being about $7.5 million over 4 years before selling the business to 65 private investors, all of which, were huge customers of Protein Bar, with the exception of Mark Cuban, who'd never been to a protein bar. Um, and then got it to a point where we had 12 locations open and then another eight in various stages of construction across DC, Denver, and Chicago, and then sold a majority of the business to L Catterton. Um, I stayed on and ran it for about a year, but then we hired someone to replace me. The business, like many during COVID, had its ups and its downs, and we used COVID as a time to sort of contract to get stronger. So COVID ended up being a net positive for folks in the restaurant industry if they had a great product, mostly because, fortunately, the government recognized that we were producing food for people. So we needed to stay in business, and they supported us with PPP and EIDL loans. So COVID, we ended up contracting by shrinking stores. Now we're at about 20 locations, I think. We opened in LaGuardia Airport, which is great because that's now my home airport. At the Delta Terminal, we opened in O'Hare. We opened in Salt Lake City Airport. We have Boise Airport coming. So the business is doing great now, but it took a minute through COVID to sort of like I said, shrink to grow, and that's what it did.
Well, there's a couple of things that I want to pull apart because there's a lot there. One, you just kind of name dropped Mark Cuban real quick, so I did pick up on that. But what does it take to scale it? Because you said you had a vision in the beginning. So you started with the vision knowing that you wanted to scale. So that was already baked in from your perspective. It wasn't like an eventual aha moment. You started knowing you wanted to scale. How did that impact your approach to how you looked at the business?
Yeah. So there was pros and there was cons. So the when I started, every decision that I made had to be two things. It had to be what I would define as scalable. So if I was going to pick a menu board design, I need to imagine how could this menu board be changed if we had 1,000 restaurants. So like every decision meant for that. So which POS machine, I had to actually get a POS machine, point of sale machine that worked
Yeah.
if we had many units. but also changeable. So what happens if I'm wrong? Like that thing can't be so fixed to that physical space, or that can't be so important to the business that I couldn't change it. We
Right.
remodeled my first store 13 times. Um, and like 6 times before I even opened the second store, because I was just wrong and I had to tweak and adjust. Um, so those were things sort of on the pro side. And then on the con side, I think with a lot of founders that I see, they end up being rigid. Had I been rigid to my vision of, 100 protein shake shops, I would have been out of business.
Oh, wow.
So I had to adjust my vision. My vision went from being I'm going to open a bunch of Jamba Juice competitors to I'm going to open up a bunch of Chipotle competitors. So it was different. I sort of had to learn it on the fly, but I'm very fortunate that I wasn't stubborn, because I would have been stubborn into bankruptcy, um, and adjusted such that we could grow. Um, and it only happened because we earned our way. We earned our way into growth as defined by having customers buying our product. Um, a lot of folks want to scale just for the sake of scaling. Sometimes the consumer or customer doesn't need you to scale. Sometimes it's fine
Right.
just being where you are. Um, so scale because things are breaking and you need to get larger to make them better, but don't scale just for the sake of scale.
No, I love that. I love that. One, you said that you had a vision and you embedded every decision, that vision in every decision that you made, right? That to me is huge. That means you were intentional and deliberate
Yeah,
about your
everything.
desire to scale. You didn't compromise the vision to scale with your own kind of original, vision of how that scale was going to look. You knew that you wanted to scale. How you were going to, you were flexible and open to.
A better way to describe it is that scale is something you earn, not something you can create. Like you said, or another way, scale is a demand-driven thing, not a supply-driven thing. I have a plethora of supply of ideas, but if the
Right,
customer doesn't want them, then it kind of
right.
doesn't matter. I had an idea to start a shake shop, but the customer didn't want just that. They needed something else. So a lot of entrepreneurs will say, I want to scale a business. Well, you start a business first, and then when you get lots of customers and need to satisfy others, that's when you scale. It's sort of like when folks I talk to, I kind of giggle because they'll say, "Oh, I'm starting a lifestyle brand." I'm like, no, you start a brand,
A
and then if
brand.
people work it into their lifestyle, then you become a lifestyle brand. Same sort of thing with scale and growth. It comes as a byproduct of solving a problem and satisfying a customer.
You've been very transparent about Protein Bar and your experience in having so many investors and then turning around, selling it to a private equity company. Can you talk a little bit more about, the transparency of what it takes to actually successfully exit and your
Yeah.
experience with that?
Well, listen, I'm over 11 years in from having sold the business, and it's still something that I deal with mentally, emotionally, um, every day, literally every day. So yesterday was therapy Thursday. Thank you, Dr. Nira. We spent a lot of time on the transaction, because they're nuanced and they're complicated. And in the instance of Protein Bar, the reason why it's central to my mental health is because I had something I created and I sold it, or I sold some of it, 60% of it, which meant me and the investor group kept 40%. And then the business just didn't go as planned. And it's nobody's fault. Like, not every business is wildly successful. Um, so I have a lot of regret. Sometimes I regret that I didn't sell 90% of it instead of selling 60% of it. Sometimes I regret, why did I sell a majority? Maybe I should have sold 40% and stayed in control. But it's a bunch of things that are probably not healthy. They're probably not productive, but unfortunately, it's just how my brain works from a regret and a comparison perspective. Um, Now the bad news is it's all with the luxury of hindsight, right? And what my
Right.
therapist and everyone tries to remind me is that at the time I made the greatest decision and best decision for me with all of the information. It just so happened that I opened a couple bad units afterwards, and DC didn't work out the way that me and the private equity firm thought it would, and Denver wasn't as strong as a market as we thought. And in the world of retail, You think about each unit you open, you really got to bat like 98%. Like,
Wow.
and I batted like 80%. Like, so we opened 10 units and two of them didn't work. Or in my instance, opened 20 units and four of them didn't work. And that four was enough to kind of bring down the house. So the margin of error was, or bring down the house for me at least, because it throws everything off if
Mm.
you spend a lot of money up front to build a store. So point being is the regret is something I did deal with, live with every day. I got paid for it, so they give me money, so it's not like I'm crying, but I it just didn't go the way that I thought it was going to go. Now there's a chance that it still can, which is kind of exciting for Protein Bar. We're opening stores. We just opened in LaGuardia Airport, which is our home airport, so my son can eat there. So that's exciting, and there's a chance that Protein Bar can be the ubiquitous brand that I imagined and dreamt that it could be and would be. And I still get texts from friends, and they're flying through O'Hare or Salt Lake, so there's psychological income that comes from that. It just didn't go as planned, and because of that, I have regret.
What I heard you say is that there's still like emotional connection, there's still financial connection, there's a continuation of there that I don't think we talk enough about. I think people think the successful exit, made it to the top, and now I can go off and relax in some beautiful island, right? But there's a lot more work to be done even after the exit.
And it's the things that we define as a successful exit. What you just described is the 1/1000th% likelihood outcome.
Mm.
It's just rare. It's sort of like, and this is the unfortunate thing with comparison. We compare ourselves, and comparison is the thief of joy. And unfortunately, we compare our exits to others. When I got fired by Catterton, I was like, I started crying. And I was crying not because I was fired, but because I wasn't Mark Zuckerberg. Like, why couldn't I be the founder that still runs his company many years later?
Wow.
Why could I not be like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and the like? And it's taken me many years of therapy and psychedelics to just convince me I'm just not those guys, or I'm not Sarah Blakely, so I'm not those guys or those gals. Um, but it's not easy. It's not easy to deal with and deal with the regret. But again, on the surface, oh, don't cry for me, Matt. This dude who started
Right.
something and sold it, and but it's just not what everyone thinks.
No, Matt, the transparency is huge because I think that just as you are talking about comparison, I guarantee you there are hundreds, if not thousands, of people who are comparing themselves to you, who are looking at the fact that you were able to have this vision, see it brought to life, have other people buy into that vision to the point that you were able to exit, and not just exit once, but twice. I want to get into Limitless in just a second. So it's so interesting that you say that. I feel like everyone needs to hear that no one is immune to the disease of comparison.
Yeah, exactly. There's
Uh,
there's really no two ways around it, and but again, I'm a victim of it as much as I'm the you know someone who's you know corroborates it, right? Like
right.
it's just there. But everybody's different. Not everybody has this sort of thing of where they're comparing themselves. Just I guess the only way I could sort of put a bow on this is just that everyone needs to remember to run their own race, and that everyone's outcomes are different. And what's important to some people, and I'm battling this today, every day, what I'm working on now versus other people that do exactly what I do, but bigger or faster with a bigger team. And I get envious.
I feel like there needs to be a class or at least a specialty in mental health therapy for entrepreneurs. Because, as an entrepreneur, it is a toll. It's a toll on your spirit. It's a toll on how you perceive yourself, right? On one end, you perceive yourself to be this really smart, very capable person, but very quickly the market can give you an indication that makes you feel otherwise. But I think this is the conversation that people need to hear because there's so much rhetoric.
When you and I graduated from business school X years ago, as you said earlier,
Mhm.
um, yeah, but yeah, when we were coming out of business school, remember entrepreneurs were like the losers. Like if anyone said, "Oh, what are you doing after graduation?" oh, I'm doing something entrepreneurial. You're like, this guy is a loser. He couldn't get a job
You couldn't get a
interview.
job.
Yeah, Coke wouldn't talk to you, Kraft didn't
That's
interview
right.
you, Goldman wouldn't interview you. Like, what a loser. And then even in '09, when I left Kraft to start Protein Bar, people were like, are you crazy? What are you doing? It was
Yeah,
really only until 2012, when social media exploded and we started seeing this Jeff Bezos guy and this Mark Zuckerberg guy and this Sarah Blakely lady, and we started comparing ourselves to them. Did entrepreneurs become kind of rock stars? Now they're sort of
I
idolized.
love that. I love that. Now, so you, I think we met in Chicago like years ago, and this was like after Protein Bar, and you were like, I'm on to something new, I'm on to something different, and you literally were exploring multiple ideas. At that time, I think you had some interns, exploring different ideas. I remember you somehow, got to Limitless. Now, now you have Protein Bar, and now you're moving into uh, Limitless. What do you think is the key to kind of creating these kind of products or brands like that lets this is, the idea that's next for me?
For me with Protein Bar and both with Limitless, they started when I solved a problem for myself. I became my core customer. And then Shopflix, which was my third venture, which wasn't as successful. I was lucky I exited to QVC, but it wasn't, Shopflix didn't exit to QVC. I did. But um, with Limitless and Protein Bar, I was my core customer and I solved a problem for myself and then just verified that other people had the same problem and then went to solve it for them too, and just hoped that that universe of people with the same problem existed. But the key was solving it for myself first, not trying to solve it for everybody, but solving it for myself and then hoping other people caught on. In the instance of Protein Bar, I was wrong. The solution I created for myself, a protein shake shop, was wrong. I had to add food. With Limitless, the solution I started for me, clean coffee, I was wrong. So I had to create sparkling water, and that ended up being the thing that I sold to Dr. Pepper. Um, but I still started with myself, got in the game, and then survived long enough to pivot and find that customers wanted maybe something else.
So tell me about your process to sell to Dr. Pepper. Because what I love about your story is that each of the businesses that you've exited, they've had a different exit story. So there isn't a, one-stop shop approach to exit. Can you talk a little bit about how you scaled and exit for Limitless?
With Limitless, I got sort of lucky. A few fortunate accidents broke in my favor. So the first one was I was selling cold brew coffee to grocery stores, but not really selling a lot. And grocery store retailers were telling me, listen, we don't need another cold brew coffee brand. There's 100 of them. So that was fortunate accident number two. Fortunate accident number one. Fortunate accident number two was we were decaffeinating coffee beans, and I drink a lot of sparkling water. So we had excess caffeine powder that I sprinkled into my Perrier, as a way to not have that much caffeine from cold brew. So, oh, that's very interesting. Fortunate accident number three was I knew I wanted to do this LaCroix with caffeine. So I cold called manufacturers all across the country. But I was very lucky that the plant manager of the Dr. Pepper facility in suburban Chicago listened to my voicemail that I left him, sent it to the head of manufacturing, and got Dr. Pepper to be my co-packer. So
Wow.
they made the product for me. Next fortunate accident for me was I had a little bit of early distribution at Whole Foods in Southern California. The beverage buyer from Walmart happened to be in a market visit, saw the product, and invited me to Bentonville. Next fortunate accident was trying to get to Bentonville that day was very challenging. It's a very funny planes, trains, and automobiles story where a flight was canceled, and there was a storm, and I went to a different airport, but I got there 1 minute late. Buyer
Oh
from
yeah.
Walmart said, hey, we want to put you into Walmart. Said, amazing. How many stores? Like 10 in Chicago? Oh, no, no, no. We want to put you in a Walmart. Like 1,000 in the Midwest. No, 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 no. All Walmart. So
Wow.
4,400 stores. So that was pretty fortunate for me. And then sort of like the last and final fortunate accident was after we were in the market for a while, selling pretty well at Walmart, making a lot of product. Dr. Pepper noticed, like, look at this guy, Limitless, making a ton. And then Coke noticed, and then Coke announced that they were starting a brand called Aha, which was their version of Pepsi's bubbly or of LaCroix, but in the announcement they said, "Hey, we're putting caffeine in it." So then I was like, "All right, Dr. Pepper, you don't have a caffeinated sparkling water, and you're making mine, so kind of poop or get off the pot." And it just worked out that all those series of fortunate accidents broke in my favor, and ended up selling the brand to Keurig Dr. Pepper right before COVID, which was another fortunate accident, right?
What strikes me about that story is your willingness to just put yourself out there, right? A part that you skipped over was the fact that you were cold calling, these top manufacturing companies, right, to be your co-packer.
And it's fine.
What is
I didn't even have a manufacturing process or a recipe. I was calling people saying, "Can you make LaCroix? Yes or no?" And they say, "Yes, great. Can you put caffeine powder in it?" I don't know. It's never been done before. Maybe, probably. So most places didn't even know how to manufacture it.
I mean, I just think that's just bold as hell, right? I just think the average
Fortune
person,
favors the bold, TC. You know that.
I know that's what I want to talk about. I mean, the fact that just said, "Yeah, I'm just going to give Dr. Pepper a ring and see if they can make my product for me." I think that's a gem there because that's something I don't think most people would have the aha moment to do. So, like you say, fortune favors the bold. And so I just wanted to point that out because I just think that's remarkable.
It goes back to that point I started with around obsession. So I was obsessed with making this thing, this sparkling water with caffeine thing, this canned beverage. I was obsessed with making it happen. Now, could have been a failure. I didn't know that it was going to be successful. So like just being obsessed with it isn't entirely a guarantee of success, but it's what willed it into existence.
So, how do you build teams? How do you convince other people? Because you had to convince a lot of people to buy into your obsession. So what has always been your approach to getting people to share into your vision, to see that same obsession that you talk about?
Not trying to convince them. They either get it or they don't, right? This is where I'm going with this thing, and either join me or get out of the way. And know that if what we do, what I think that we can do, we're all gonna enjoy in the process of it. So that was kind of it. It, in hindsight, like looking back, like it was this like look in my eye that you just like couldn't shake. Like I was going after these things, specifically protein bar, and then when sparkling water happened, like unfervently, without anything getting in my way, and fully unrestricted, and and people could see and feel that I was a force. um I will tell you that people is my hardest or my biggest area of development, I would suppose, when it comes to organizations. I'm just not good at it. I'm not good at being a boss. I tend to think the best of people. I tend to think that everybody will be a self-starter and everyone cares about the brand as much as I do, but that's just not true. So I have a hard time of motivating. I'm getting better at it. Well, now I don't have any employees, but um, it was always hard for me. I used to joke that like, I used to be able to tell within 5 seconds if someone's going to be a good fit or not, and I was right 60% of the time. So like most of the time I could tell and that person would end up being great, but about 40% of the time it would set me back. Fortunately, it was more right than wrong, but it just goes to show that I wasn't perfect at it. And I think in hindsight, I wish I could, well, I was going to say I wish that I could have spent more time um, learning about certain people before acting on them, but I just didn't and moved fast, and that's part of my execution style.
I think your job of being the visionary, being that person that was obsessed, being the person that got everyone like that, right, was the nugget that made the biggest difference for you in your business. I think that's huge. And what I love about it is now you're taking the same knowledge, the same passion, the same understanding, and you're working with other small and medium-sized businesses. Can you talk a little bit more about the adventures of how you are kind of acquiring and growing and scaling other businesses?
Yeah. So essentially, I was in the number one seat for 17 years, and it was quite challenging for me. I mean, I survived. So now what I'm doing is I'm finding small business, either owners or folks who want to buy small businesses and providing them capital, either myself or by raising it and structuring a deal and then giving those folks my services as a co-pilot, essentially co-piloting these folks as they become first-time business owners. Um, so we've done this a few times. I have a cleaning company in Sarasota, Florida that was small when I first met them earlier this year, and they're doing about $1 million in revenue and put some capital in. And we bought a second company and then a third, and then hopefully next month we'll close on a fourth, and then a month after that, geez, yeah, fifth, um,
Wow.
to turn it into, about a $5 million or so cleaning company. Working on buying a livestock feed mill, which makes food for chickens, pigs, cows, and horses in North Carolina. So what I'll do is I'll work with the seller to try to get him or her what they want, find investors, and then find an operator to run it. So for me, it's great because I get to take all these learnings, knowledge, and experiences and sort of like, you know, extol that onto others, impart
Yeah.
that onto others so that they hopefully can at least, maybe dodge a bullet or two, not to be fully unscathed because that's when they learn, but at least dodge the big bullets, um, and help their businesses grow. We'll see if it works. So far, so good. But I'm enjoying it and being a co-pilot for either folks who want to acquire a business, or for sellers who want to sell their business.
Now, what do you look for in these businesses that you are acquiring? How do you look at a business and say, you know what, that's a big idea. I think I can grow that business. What are you looking for?
It's so tough to say. I wish I was better at answering this because I'm not a professional. I want to make it clear that I'm not a pro investor. Pro investors do this for a living. They have their template and their formula and their playbook. For me, it's just, is there something special about the business that's either being underappreciated by the market or being underappreciated by the owners? For example, this livestock feed mill, the thing that makes it special is not that it sells food to chicken, pigs, and cows, which are production animals. What makes it special is that they have this food that's like, irreplaceable for horse owners, and it's a true performance horse feed. But the seller's in his 60s and doesn't want to sell outside of the state of North Carolina and doesn't want to put effort toward it because he doesn't have to. He's been doing this thing for, 50 plus years between him and his dad. So the thing that I found that was special about this one was the actual ability to create this performance horse feed. Now I just need to do more of it and explode it. So I found someone to operate the business with. I'll provide him some services on the side to help him be a business owner, and hopefully we'll turn the business called Mule City Specialty Feeds. Hopefully we'll turn that into an everyday. Well, that won't be the brand. We turn it to an everyday brand, but hopefully we'll create horse food for horse owners all across the country. But it's really about what's the thing that's special that's being underappreciated or undervalued.
No, I love that because what this shares is that a big idea can be found in the detail. The oak tree and the acorn, right? You see the bigness even in the smallest of
Well,
detail.
one thing to remember is most ideas aren't even really created. They're just other ideas that exist that have been approved upon. Protein
Mhm.
Bar didn't create smoothie shops. Those have existed forever. I just did them with high protein foods. Limitless didn't create sparkling water. I just was the earliest or first to do it with caffeine in them. And a lot of these things is just evolving with the times or
Mhm.
evolving with the changing customer dynamics and not creating something net new. Just take something small that people love, find a second person that loves it. That's the other thing too that I look for is, do they have raving fans, raving customers? This livestock feed mill, as an example, does. One of my cleaning companies has very loyal customers. Um, some other things that I'm looking at have incredibly loyal customers.
I love that. I love that. So, Matt, I can go on and on. This is so much fun.
Like like Lionel Richie, we can go all night long.
I know, right? This is so much fun. I love this. But what is, as we wrap up, I want to get from you, what is the thing that you would love to tell people about the realities of scaling and exiting. You mentioned you dropped some amazing nuggets and some amazing gems this whole time, but what are the key things that you find yourself telling people over and over again about the realities of scaling and exiting a business that you really wish people can really understand?
Well, the call I had before this with is an entrepreneur who's wants to do something in the med spa space, and I'm seeing that she's over analyzing and will have decision paralysis. And in this instance, I'm saying progress over perfection. Just get out and go. Things will never be perfect. So usually folks are afraid to take risk until risk is gone. Well, then that's not taking risk. That's just doing stuff.
Yeah.
So no venture is risk free. It's sort of one of the first things I'll say. Another thing I'll say is business ownership or entrepreneurship is not made for everybody. Like just because it's sexy on TV doesn't mean it's made for you. Being a fireman is real sexy on TV, but I don't think I could be a fireman. So it's okay if it's not for you. And then number three is just do it. You just have to do it. Like the first step is the most important. But once you get the car out of the garage, you'll find a place to drive. So I kind of say this sort of over and over again to folks, which it just speaks to me at speed of execution, but obviously I haven't been perfect. All the things that I've executed have been failures. Fortunately, I've adjusted and shifted on a dime in each of the instances to make them right.
Oh my gosh, I love this. Okay, so my last question, answer how you want. What's your definition of a big idea?
One that you're obsessed with. That's it. If you're obsessed with the idea, like this woman I just mentioned, she wants to do something in healthcare, med spas, and she's evaluating, do I do nails or do I do a massage? I'm like, Sherry, what do you want to do? What's true to you? It doesn't matter what the business model is. Like, what do you want to wake up doing every day? And that's sort of really the most important, is what's something that you're true to, that you're obsessed with. Because that's really all. It doesn't mean it's going to be a good idea, but it's a big one.
That's
And
right.
it could be a B dot I dot G dot idea. Doesn't mean it's going to be a good one. You have to make it a good idea. You have to convince people it's a good idea.
There you go. A big idea doesn't necessarily mean it's a good idea. You have to convince other people that it's a good idea.
And you do that usually you do it by solving their problem. Sometimes you do it through communications or marketing or just telling them the product exists. But it's not just going to come to you. It's not if you build it, they will come. You gotta go to them.
Oh my gosh, Maddie, this was so much fun. I had such a great time. Thank you for spending some time with me today.
I love you. I'll do anything for you. Although, if anyone's listening, they heard me say TC earlier. It's because Toria's maiden name is Critchlow, so I always think of her as TC. So if anyone heard me drop a TC on this, that was not me making a mistake. It was just
no. Yep. TC all the way for you. I appreciate you, Maddie. Thank you so much for joining the Anatomy of a Big Idea. Thank you for joining me in my, big idea and having some fun along the way.
Of course, I'm now going to go talk to a residential plumber who has a beautiful business in Southern California.
Fun things. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Cool. I appreciate you, T.
I appreciate you too.